days ago when Rwanda announced the granting of 30 days visa upon arrival for all countries without prior approval, the move was met with mixed feelings. Due to Nigeria, Nigeria has now committed to granting visa on arrival for travelers with African passports. Rwanda said for all, Nigeria says those with African passports. This has also generated a lot of reactions, conversations, and that is what we want to sustain on this program. And this is coming to months after Nigeria ratified the African Continental Free Trade Zone. So our focus on this segment, the discussion segment on Insight, is on visa arrival. My guest is a retired Assistant Controller General of Nigeria Immigration Service, Sambo Gwandu. Thanks for joining me on Insight.
Thank you very much.
All right. Now, let's look at generally the visa arrival position of Nigeria. Specifically, Rwanda said the entire globe, but Nigeria says Africa.
Yes, I think this is a matter of policy. And I think those that are in the policy formulation should answer this question. But I think it may not be unconnected with the Nigerian foreign policy, which always says Africa first. And another thing I think is that perhaps Nigeria is trying to do it on a pilot scheme because of the implication they are in. And don't forget, ever before we had visa on arrival, but for some few categories of people, some heavy investors that perhaps due to some exigency they couldn't process and obtain visa from any mission, and that was discretionary also to the government. So it is not completely a new thing, but I think government is trying to take it, in my opinion, as a pilot scheme to see where we can go, because it is a very costly project.
When you say it is very, very costly, that's what I'm hinting. Why would Nigeria say to start with those with African passports? Does it not appear discriminatory?
No, it is not. Don't forget, even before this policy, we had ECOWAS protocol on free movement of goods and services. And even that protocol, as far as I'm concerned, and to the best of my knowledge, was not properly implemented. Okay. Because when you say you open your doors for everybody to come in, then you have to prepare for the challenges that policy will definitely come with. I give you an example from the ECOWAS protocol on free movement of persons. When that policy was introduced, and it was hurriedly, implemented, Immigration Service, as it then, had no capacity, to the best of my understanding. One, for that purpose, Immigration had to open offices in all the local governments, which was a heavy expenditure. Those offices should be equipped, right? Why? Because when you allow people to come, the next thing is to make sure that you monitor them. You understand?
Sure.
So even that policy, in my own opinion, was not properly implemented. Now, if the government say, okay, visa on arrival for everybody, is Immigration Service having the capacity? Because Why, in the first place, why applying for visa?
That takes me to the next question. The policy will kick off sometime in 2020.
Yes.
The details are still very sketchy. Now, this means a lot for Nigeria in many ways. Businesses will be boosted, activities will hold here, all that. So what implication if this policy succeeds eventually?
It is a very good policy. It will facilitate trade. We have African free trade and so on and so forth. But then the implication is that, when you apply for visa, why do you have to apply for visa? You apply for visa to enable the relevant authority carry out some checks on you to make sure that, yes, you are desirable. Now, if you said visa on arrival, which means visa at a very short notice, do we have the capacity? I agree, quite all right. The system is dynamic, and with the technology, now instead of referring to some organizations or some document, you can punch your computer and know whether somebody is desirable or otherwise. But even then, it comes with cost.
Okay.
And don't forget, yes, economic development is one thing, but the security of the nation is another thing. When you are opening for business people to come in, some undesirable element can as well take and do advantage of that system and penetrate.
So what should Immigration Service be doing differently so that they check what you just raised?
Well, I must commend the current leadership of Nigerian Immigration Service. They are doing a lot. Just recently they launched the biometrics for non-Nigerians resident in Nigeria. It is a very commendable project. But even then, what I observed, it was only those that volunteer to come and register and do the biometrics that came. What about those that didn't turn up? Does the immigration have the capacity to check for them? Well, the system is dynamic. And like I said earlier on, the current leadership of immigration is doing a lot. And I cannot speak for them. I'm not in the system now. I have retired almost 8 years ago.
The bulk of experience on you.
Yes, but then it is going to be a very big challenge to the Nigerian Immigration Service. And I think they are doing a lot.
Okay, let's look at the advantages now in terms of tourism, in terms of activities into Nigeria. You find that at times some huge phenomenal activities we want to hold in a country where you need to fill visa forms, all that. They'll tell you because of this cumbersomeness, let's go to where we can do visa on arrival. Now Nigeria says we are granting visa on arrival, though to those with African passports alone. What advantage for Nigeria?
You see, even other countries that adopt the policy of issuing visa on arrival, I don't think it is completely open to everybody.
Okay.
Some of them targeted particular group of people with that policy. You see, if not for lack of the policy, visa policy, perhaps we wouldn't have been colonized. Somebody will have to knock at your door, look at him. If he is worse than you, I guess you admit him. Right? So even those, Ethiopia, Dubai, and other countries that adopted similar policies, they adopted it targeting particular group of people, not everybody. So I'm not surprised if Nigerian government limit it in the first place for those carrying African passport. At least let us see how it goes. Don't forget, we are facing a lot of security challenges, terrorism, and so on and so forth. So if you open up, you know the consequences. Let me tell you, when I was in Borno, when the Boko Haram strike for the first time. Northern governors met in Kaduna and pointed accusing fingers to immigration. But I wondered why, because were they not aware of the ECOWAS protocol of free movement of persons? And when you allow somebody to come in, do you ask him to drop his religion before he comes into the country? It is the system. So if it is properly packaged, taking all the factors into consideration, fine. It is a very, very good. It will encourage tourism. It will facilitate business, easy way of doing business, and so on and so forth. But it comes with cost.
So how can this cost be surmounted?
Well, it is an opportunity cost. For every advantage, there could be some disadvantages. So Nigeria should prepare for the disadvantages. When the Nigerian Immigration Service should be properly funded to face these challenges. That is one. Two, other services as well are there, because it is not only the Nigerian Immigration Service. There are other secret services also are involved in all these projects. SSS is there, and so on and so forth. So this policy should be properly looked into. Now that the pronouncement has been made, before the commencement, I think all the T's should be crossed and the I's should be dots. Otherwise, we will have problems.
Okay, given the huge market Nigeria has, and Nigeria joining the league of countries that are offering visa on arrival, what advantage for Africa from the bigger picture?
Well, you know, the trade integration is very, very important. You can't close their doors. You have to open. That's what Dubai did. They open up for the whole world to come. And it pays them to a very large extent. But you don't know their own kind of arrangement. I saw something very interesting in Dubai, and it is part of security system. When you go to Dubai, when you go to shop, you make your shopping, do you know that you don't need to take it to your hotel? That very shop you make your shopping will deliver it to your hotel. It is another way of checking. It is a security. Somebody told me, for instance, in Malaysia, I don't know how far it is true, all the taxi drivers in Malaysia are police officers. So there are certain innovations that we have to adopt while we open the way for people to come. We also create a way to check those are coming.
Okay, like I said, we know sometime this policy will be fully implemented somewhere in the year 2020. It's a countdown to it. And meaning that for now it's a bit sketchy. But there's no going back on it because government has made a pronouncement. So what attitude should Nigerians put up regarding this government position now? Should it be attitude of fear or attitude of the fact that
Nigerians should be positive. That is what I will say. Nigerians should be positive. You know, we have to try. We can't remain at the backstage all the time. The world is moving, and we have to move with the world, right? So Nigerians should be positive. Give it positive thinking, and let us see how it goes. There is no system that is perfect. As we go on, the loopholes will be identified and the care will be taken. So I say Nigerians should be positive as far as this policy is concerned.
So what do you say to the critics who are saying that this policy is not good, it won't work, it will open the borders, will bring unwanted elements into the country?
There is nothing you will do without some people looking at it from the other way around. And they are helping. Because the more they criticize, the more the loopholes will be observed, and the more they will be taken care of. You don't expect everybody to be the same. So the critics, yes, they have the right to criticize, and from that critics also something can be picked where they observe some loopholes, it will help. The people sat down to formulate these policies. Those people, can make mistakes. They can be weak in some areas and so on and so forth. And somebody from outside will pinpoint something that will be very, very relevant and should be taken care of. So criticism, I think, is a welcome development as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, let me ask this question differently before I let you go on this segment. Now, what should be the position of the Nigerian Immigration Service? You have talked about the fact that they have taken a lot of proactive stance, but now coming up with a visa on arrival for people with African passports. What should they be doing differently that they have not been doing before?
Well, I think they have a lot to do. They have to be focused, training and retraining of their officers, and making sure that monitoring is effective. They should adopt a very good monitoring device to ensure that this policy succeeds. But on the other hand, also, the government should come in and make sure that they are provided, or the service is provided with all what it requires for it to do that. You understand? Like I said earlier on, the current leadership is doing very well, honestly. A lot of innovations, a lot of this thing.
With this new one coming in now.
Yes. With this new one, also, the government as well should argument. Make sure that they are comfortable. Make sure that they get all the necessary tools to work with. There must be motivation. And I assure you, Nigerian Immigration Service is one service that I've been doing.
So when it perfects, what's your projection for Nigeria regarding this policy in the next 1 year? By the time it starts being fully implemented?
You will see a lot of influx of tourists, which is going to be very positive to the economy. Investors as well, those that cannot have the patience to go through the rigors of obtaining visa and so on and so forth. Now it is relaxed to a very large extent, and Nigeria is better for it.
Thank you so much, Sambo Gwandu, retired Assistant Comptroller General, Nigerian Immigration Service. It was nice sharing your thoughts with us on the visa on arrival policy of the Nigerian government.
Thank you very much.
So we believe that when it takes off somewhere in the year 2020, a lot of what you said will come to play.
We hope so.
Okay.
We should be positive.
Next on Insight is the interview segment. Don't go away. Call it balance of trade. Nigeria's merchandise trade grew in Q3 of 2019 with a higher export and lower import. What does this portend for the economy? My guest on this segment, looking at the Q3 growth of Nigeria in terms of balance of trade, is Nii Akinsinju. Nii Akinsinju is an investment analyst. Thanks for joining me.
My pleasure always. Thank you.
I know this issue looks quite technical, and it takes an economic mind or analytical mind to understand what it means. What is the implication of this? Before going to the figures.
Yes, the major implication is that we are selling more to the world and buying less from the world. So when a sovereign, when a country sells more to the world and buying less, it means it's conserving more of its foreign reserve, and it's adding more to that reserve too. And that means is producing more for exports while relying less on imports.
Okay.
And the major delineation of that transaction is balance of trade, balance of payments. And the natural economist will look out for a balance that is positive or surplus. When a balance is positive on the side of the country, it also suggests that there are more productive activities going on within that country. It may start translating, in our case too, over time, one, to diversification of the economy, two, to expanding business opportunities, especially where such is recorded in the oil sector. Of course, increase employment opportunities, and of course, increase foreign exchange inflow. Because the more you sell outside, the more you increase your volume of foreign exchange. And as you also do that, when you reduce imports, when your import is what you use your foreign exchange to buy. So when you reduce imports, you also have what you call favorable balance of payments.
So a critical mind listening to you be saying, what's NIE talking about? What really are we exporting that would have kept us where we are right now? And in the figures, what does it translate to?
In this particular case, we have been able to save or to have a surplus advantage of up to 1.547 trillion in the third quarter that we're talking about. Now, what that tells us is that that is 1.547 that we could have used, to bring in things. One, we are conserving it in our economy. We are using it to expand our productive activities. We are using it to impact, on the standard of living of the Nigerian. The more you produce domestically, the more you provide opportunity for employment, the more you create jobs. The more you create not just direct jobs, you also create indirect jobs. And when you do that also, you are creating wealth. As you create wealth, you are creating a circle of wealth too. Because when someone has a job, he gets a salary. Out of that salary is also going into transaction of purchases, demand and purchases. As he's doing that, he is also enabling manufacturers, farmers, to produce more. Because that's what we call effective demand. When you have money to buy, if you buy sardine, if you buy corn on the roadside, you are enabling not just the retailer or the vendor of the coin, you are enabling the farmer at the back end of that value chain to also produce more. As it's producing more, the wealth of that community is the household wealth is increased because he has more money now to also sit his family needs and to also encourage him to produce more. If he had produced just 1 ton of corn this quarter, because there is that cyclical movement of wealth that had enabled him to earn more, he would likely have to purchase chemicals or increase the land size, that he will use to farm more and increase his output. So that 1 ton could actually increase to another 1.5 ton or to 2 tons, and effect of increasing productivity.
So just for emphasis sake, could the land border closure by the federal government outside other factors be responsible for this?
Well, marginally. When I say marginally, because our imports fell in terms of what came in. We also mainly import fuel, petroleum fuel into the country. And this quarter, of course, the border closure started in June, July, and what it reflected in the dip, by 2.7% of our import, which mainly has to do with petroleum fuel, So to a large extent, I think on the marginal line, it's reflected, but principally again because there was a major item that we exported, a number of major items. Interestingly, our major origin for our exports, our major destination for export was Ghana, in a West African neighbor, which shows the potentials in the African continental free trade zone. So if Ghana took like 17% of our total export, mainly from the manufacturing sector. Now that is telling us a story of capacity building in country, in Nigeria, and of course of supply points within the West African region. And a major hope and target for any economy is to have a strong manufacturing line, because manufacturing line usually opens up the economy, creates more opportunity for jobs, and of course creates more opportunities for GDP growth, So if Ghana in particular, in terms of figures now, out of the 5.288 trillion that accrued to us, the value of our exports, the non-oil sector, the crude oil sector actually had about 70% of it, But the non-oil sector, for the first time, grew to like 29%, of it. And out of that 29%, the manufacturing sector took about 24%.
Okay, with the takeoff of the visa on arrival, which will be implemented somewhere in the year 2020, because the operational model for now appears a bit sketchy. Now, will it have any impact on this? Maybe jack us further?
It would, because the whole thing about economy is about movement, it's about traffic. What economy does not encourage is stagnancy. So if an entity, if a sovereign encourages movement of people, and in this case we are not talking of open borders, we are talking of controlled movement. My understanding of this policy is wherever you are coming from, you must hold a valid passport. With your valid passport, you get to Nigeria's point of entry. You give a brief explanation of what you are here to do, and you'll be stamped in. What the attraction mainly, see, Nigeria is the largest economy in Africa. Every African accepts that. And it has been a major attraction too. Some people want to come to Nigeria for sightseeing. Lagos is one of the 10 largest economies in Africa. Some Africans have been hearing about Lagos. Abuja is a major attraction. I've traveled by road with a number of foreign African country indigents. And by the time we arrived Abuja, they were wowed, We talk of our neighbors, countries people in Togo, in Ghana and all that. For God's sake, you cannot, the infrastructure we are complaining about, in terms of the size and length of our roads, when these people see such, they are overwhelmed. The story of Abuja is a humongous story. It's a story of a wonder in Africa, an environment that is more or less built up in a certain way, in a certain period. People all over Africa wants to see such environment, and we are talking of. We also have different tourist attraction. People also want to come in and do business with Nigerians. There are a lot of opportunities that other African countries see in this country, and they are waiting just for that ease of movement. The ease of movement, I can tell you, would have nothing less than 1% to our GDP growth.
Granted, we don't export crude anymore. We process here, maybe we export the finished petroleum products in various shades.
That's futuristic.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Now, if all the refineries are turned around, all the policy directions that have been planned in that sector, fully operational. You have just talked about the fact that all what we are talking about here was 70% crude, 30% non-oil sector.
Yeah.
If this is corrected, what's your analysis
Oh, well,
in terms
it's,
of
it's
oil and non-oil sector?
It's value added we are talking about now, because the aspiration of any economic-minded individual in Nigeria is to see our crude oil processed into different byproducts, and we are talking of close to 32 byproducts. And of course, the African nations, African continent, as it were, are waiting for products from Nigeria. Many African countries still import from outside Nigeria, Amsterdam and all that, So if we have functional refineries, and I am thinking that in the next 2 years we are going to achieve that. In fact, we'll achieve so much that some people may say I'm being unnecessarily hopeful, but this is just mere reading of what is on ground. You have the 650,000 a day, the barrel a day, Dangote refineries coming on stream. Our 445,000 a day collective refineries, I am very sure will come on stream in another 3 or 4 years, because from what I heard, there's support now in terms of financing, which had been the major limiting challenges for it. Now there's also in place a 20 million liters Egina condensate refineries coming on. So when you aggregate all this, and I'm hoping it's not just about talk, I see that they are realizable. When you aggregate all this, it does mean that our output will be huge, will not only satisfy in terms of PMS. We are talking of 45 million liters a day. All this put together, we'll be talking of more than 120 million liters a day. So, and where would that go to? It will go to exports, value added. Now, we'll earn more money on PMS, we'll earn more money on diesel, we'll earn more money on high-power fuel oil, we'll earn more money on low-power fuel oil, we'll earn more money on chemicals, and so many things, on urea, on just keep talking. We are talking of close to 32 primary byproducts, and you still have byproducts like naphtha that can also produce more byproducts. So I see that as the target, and when you're able to achieve this, it makes the economy more mobile.
Quite ambitious there.
It's not ambitious. I think it's practical. For instance, we have a 200,000 floating production storage platform now that is mainly producing 200,000 condensates, a day. So when you have that 200,000 barrels, condensate a day. So all you need to do is to just attach one refinery to it, and it's doing that for you.
So we always talk about when things like this play up, attitude. We ask for attitude now. Yeah. Now, what benefits for the private sector? Talking about the average Nigerian with all this, and if there are humongous benefits like you have said, what attitude should Nigerians be putting up within this scenario?
The whole thing is about looking for opportunities. A number of Nigeria took the recession in the bad light. A recession is supposed to be a time to take position. There's always a swing period in any economy, the up period and the down period. This is usually reflected in the stock markets, or even in the TB market and all that, the capital market generally. I remember that I bought a share of First Bank. I'm sorry to mention the name now. First Bank at 3 naira 40 kobo at the time, Even, in fact, that particular share went to as low as 2 naira 50 kobo. Yep. But over a period of 24 months, it went to a high of 8 naira. And I sold. I'd made so much money, from it. If I'd had money to buy 1 million units at let's say 3-point-something million, and if I was exiting at 8-point-something naira, I would have made 6 million naira, you know. That is how economy runs. The important thing is that you have a manager, you know, leadership of a company, of a country, that you know is focused, and you are sure this economy will not run down. It is a temporary challenge. And because a recession is a temporary challenge, any conscious-minded person will take position, you know, either in terms of looking for opportunities, you know, in that recession. For instance, the major opportunity we have been able to use sovereign-wise in the recession we had experienced in 2016 had to do with diversifying our economy. We have been talking about diversifying this economy for the past 40 years, and we have not done anything about it. But the reality of that recession informed us, you know, that we had no choice but to start diversifying. So if we are talking about 30% export content coming from non-crude oil, what it tells us is that we have started that process of diversification. So for every Nigerian, there is always an opportunity in challenges around us. So as we are talking now, the whole chemical complex, for instance, that we used to have in the 70s and the 80s had gone down because of the situation with our refineries. But with the coming of all these refineries I'm talking about, there's going to be a rejuvenation, you know, of the petrochemical complex. That is a whole industry on itself, providing economic activities for the private sector, enlarging opportunities for trade and other transactions, and of course providing more jobs. So it's when challenges come like that, I am more sanguine, I'm more hopeful that you look on the other side, and the other side is not even about years. You can count in months when you exit, and that is what we're doing now. Okay. We are the growth trajectory, as it were.
Thank you, Niyi Akinsinju. We looked at the growth in Q3 of 2019 of Nigeria's balance of trade, right?
Yeah.
Okay. It was nice talking with you on Insight.
My pleasure, always.
Up next on Insight is the media review segment. Stay with us.
The media play an important role in society. But when crimes are committed, what should the media do? My guest, who is a legal practitioner and a veteran in the world of journalism, Femi Okeowo, will provide answers. It's nice to have you in our studio.
Nice to be with you, Elizabeth.
All right, so tell us, as a veteran in the world of journalism and a legal practitioner, what exactly is the role of the media in fighting crimes?
They say knowledge is power.
Okay.
Once you know, a lot has been done. Yes, the system provides for ways of resolving issues that come out of crime, going to court, sentencing them, discharging them if they are innocent. Those are things that the system must do. But if it's done in the dark, then a lot of things can go wrong. That is where the media comes in.
Okay.
So all these systems laid down also provide roles for the media to let people know what is going on. So just like you said in your introduction, the media is very, very vital in letting people know what is happening. So basically, I think what the media does when a crime is committed is to let the populace know a crime is committed, possibly know how it was committed. It helps us to know what to do to stop such offenses being committed subsequently. That is, if the system reacts adequately. But then the media is largely just to inform people, to inform the authorities, to inform the populace, and it's from the basis of knowledge that you can then take remedial measures.
Okay, now, our criminal system, what about it?
Our criminal system...
Relationship with the media.
The court itself provides for the media. You go to a normal court, they tell you, here's a press gallery. Meaning that in structuring the court recognizes that the media should be there. You see, sometimes when the court is full, when a high-profile case is on, and the court is full with lawyers and the parties, the next set of people that are very important to the judge are the media. Okay. And so provisions are made for the media to cover. It's only in a few instances, and it's indeed to protect the system, to protect the parties, that you find that the media is told not to either
come in.
No, not to. They will come in, but then they can protect the identity of the parties. Okay. When it's an infant, for instance, the media is indulged to
a minor
to protect the identity. When it's a terrorism case, and the judge allows for the witnesses, the people who will come and testify, not to be known to the public for their own protection, the media is also called upon to keep those faces and those names out. So it's always a synergy between the court and the media.
Okay. Now, let's talk about anti-corruption. There are several moves by the government to ensure that corruption is nipped to the bud. Are we there yet?
No, we are not.
Okay.
We're far from it, actually. But it's all a process, and it's part of the job we have to continually do to improve Nigeria. I said we are not because, yes, possibly, known to the public now, there may not be financial crimes known to us now being committed.
Okay.
But with investigations and all that, they become unraveled. And sometimes people accuse the investigatory and prosecutory authorities of conducting what they call media trial.
Okay.
Sometimes I don't see it that way. It is the duty of the media to let people know that somebody has been picked up for an alleged crime, and that he is being picked up and being told about it, and the public is being told about it through the media, does not necessarily mean it's a media trial. It is when it terminates at the point of informing people on the pages of the newspaper, and you don't hear anything about the case anymore in the court of law, that you can then conclude that all they have done was to try this person on the pages of the newspaper. But if it goes through and it goes to the court and he's convicted, then the people have a right to know at any point in time that somebody is being investigated. It is when he's not more, the investigation is not followed through and the case just terminates halfway and nobody hears anything about it anymore. Only that person has been soiled in the public view, that you can say then, therefore, that somebody has been tried in the media. So I think that in terms of financial crimes, the media is well and doing well.
Okay. Do we actually over or under-report crimes?
I do not think it's for as long as it is in the knowledge of the media, it's not underreported.
All right, because some would tell you, oh, it's always bad news, it's always sad news.
Crime is sad news. Crime is bad news. So the media will reflect what is happening. Sometimes I even think that the media should go. Something is happening now. Yes, it is a civil society organization that is championing it, but the media is bringing it forward. We all complain that Abuja has no CCTV, but Serap went to court to say, we want to know the details of this $460 million contract that was given about 10 years ago. We want to know the contractors that have it and all that. And it's there in the public view. Nigerians should know why a city like Abuja, the only city that is run by the federal government, shouldn't have CCTV camera. So if for 10 years we have been waiting and hoping and nobody knows anything about it, the media indeed can be accused of not investigating enough. But thank God that a civil society organization like Seraph has gone to court. It's now a public issue that the court has granted them their prayers for the Federal Ministry of Finance to divulge the names of the contractors that are handling that contract, got money to install CCTVs. So the media is not under-reporting crime. For as long as it is in the knowledge of any media practitioner, I think it is his duty, constitutional duty, to let Nigerians know what is being done about any crime.
Okay. Now, the media set the agenda They get people talking, they get the airwaves buzzing, internet and all that. Now, it's good that you are a legal practitioner and a journalist.
Yes.
Has the media been able to conscientize the society to an extent?
I give you an example of kidnapping.
Okay.
It's the media reportage of the incidents of kidnapping that's helping Nigerians to know what to do, where to move to, how to keep yourself, to be security conscious. Because when a kidnapping incident is reported, for instance, someone reads it and says, "Oh no, I will not fall a prey to this." It's because he knows what happened to that person that was kidnapped. When kidnapping is done and you find people haggling on what to pay, where to pay on telephone, and it comes to the knowledge of the media, and the media, blares that, Nigerians ask questions. What is happening to our communication system that we cannot track such things? It's first and foremost that the media has been able to report it.
Okay.
And so you begin to ask questions and you begin to help yourself. So talking about, to use the language, conscientize Nigerians, it's the reportage of the media that awakens the conscience of Nigerians to make sure that they are not as vulnerable as it is to make it possible for them to be kidnapped, for instance. And so we could apply that kind of principle to other areas, financial crimes, fraud,
yes.
Where people collect money and don't perform the duties. So then we can always use the knowledge of what we get to improve ourselves.
Okay. Now, when reporting crimes,
yes.
are there times when the media becomes biased, when there's a vested interest?
Rather, there's no such thing.
Really?
Because,
okay.
because it's damaging. It's harmful.
Okay.
To the readers. It's harmful to our system. If you color any situation, yes, you may not get the exact story of how a crime was committed. And in journalism, they say, when in doubt, you leave out.
You leave out,
So
yes.
you don't paint pictures you don't know. It's better to report a crime that was committed and leave out the details for the day when you have done your investigation, or when the authorities, in other advanced media societies, it's the media that does the investigation by themselves.
Yes.
Yes, sometimes the police, you rely on the information given to you by the police or the investigative or prosecutory authorities, but the media goes ahead to do the investigation by themselves, so they can be sure of what they are doling out to the people. So I rather that there's no such incidents that the media will be biased in reporting crime.
When there's a vested interest.
Whose interest?
Could be anybody.
Okay, let's pray, and those are the things we must continue to work on.
Okay.
In the media parlance, and ensure that only facts. Journalism, the raw material for journalism is fact. So only facts are given out to people. And like I said, when the facts are not out there yet, a corruption crime is being prosecuted, you are not sure of the facts yet, it's enough to report that a crime is being prosecuted, a crime is being charged to court. Of course, the court will avail you all the information you need, the charges and the prosecutors, the parties involved and all that. But speculation in crime is not safe for the society.
It's not safe for the society. All right, Mr. Femi Okewo, thank you so much for your time. Thank you very much. This is the much we can take. I've been having signals. We have to go. We have to go. Thank you so much for your time. We hope to have you again on set. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
And that's it on the media review segment of the program. Well, don't forget, report crimes. The media is always there, watching, looking, ready to write and ready to capture. So let's help people get justice all the time.
And I'd like, just that the guest has said, in a matter of the takeoff of the policy in the year 2020, for now, the operational model appears sketchy. But the guest has said by the time it takes off, in just 1 year, Nigeria would have been among the Committee of Nations regarding tourism, business, ease of doing business, which is already playing out, and also for the merchandise trade growth of Q3 in 2019. We believe that, like government has said, patience is the word. By the time what government has said plays out, we would have done so much, we have covered more leap regarding this space. So, Lizzie?
Keep watching Insight. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.